Hey, it's Lee, and I'm going to quickly show you how to start using your Draft Pro plugin. And I'm going to show you, if you know how to use this, you're going to be able to build beautiful websites a heck of a lot faster. So if you ever forget, remember, go to the wpdraft.com website. We've got a whole bunch of documentation, and this how it works right here is kind of the easiest way to remember what to do. First, configure Tailwind. Then apply classes, and finally start adding utility classes to blocks. In a nutshell, that's it. For the details, again, go to the documentation, and you'll want to head over to plugin settings, and you'll be able to find information on configuring Tailwind, applying classes, the theme settings, and then importing and exporting, as well as what the different utility classes are that are available to you. With that being said, why don't we get the show on the road here? So I've got a site spun up with the Draft Pro plugin installed. I've also got the Draft theme installed as well. Depending on when you're watching this, this may or may not be available for release yet. So if it's not, just hang tight, and we'll get that out to you here soon. So I'm on the home page here, and as you can see, there aren't really any styles applied here. There's no settings in the Draft Pro plugin, and I want to go ahead and start editing some of those settings and give this a little bit of style. So all you'll want to do is head over to Edit Page, and then I'm gonna close this out. If you click into a block, you'll see a couple ways where you can add classes directly to the blocks. First, there is an inline option to add utility classes, and you can add classes for mobile, tablet, or desktop here. You can also see there is an option to open the default settings and edit those as well. One other thing that's really cool in the toolbar is there is a way to add classes inline. If you click the inline classes, and you can apply, let's go ahead and apply a large font size. It'll apply it just to your selection there. Pretty cool. You have access to any Tailwind utility class inline as well. Finally, you can go over to the advanced section here, and this is kind of just tacked on to this additional CSS classes input here. You can add classes here as well. I like to do this when, say for example, I have a heading and I have a bunch of classes on it, and I want to quickly and easily copy and paste a bunch of those classes. You'll be able to do that right here. So that is, let's just add some here. So text 5XL, and then for mobile, I want that to go down to text 3XL, and then let's use the primary font on desktop here, font primary, and then we'll give it, why don't we give it a color of text primary. Okay, and you know, some of the font primary, text primary, these are all of these classes are set to their default settings. So text 5XL, this works. Let's try another one. Let's do text 7XL. You can see makes it quite a bit bigger there, and then on mobile it's gonna take it down to the text 3XL. But let's say, for example, you don't necessarily want this text 7XL to be this size, and you want an alternative style for the primary font and the primary colors. Again, the defaults are set, and in the documentation you can see all the defaults, or if you navigate to the default settings, again, this video you're watching, you probably found through this how-to guide right here. To edit those defaults, you'll head on over to Configure Tailwind, and here you can edit a bunch of default settings. By default, we use all the Tailwind CSS defaults because the team over there has spent a ton of time nailing down a very sensible set of defaults. So you don't have to adjust any of this if you don't want to, but if you know how and you want to start creating more custom styles, you'll do that here. So the spacing, again, these are all the defaults. You can use rems or ems or pixels here, and this applies to a lot of different things such as padding, margin, height, offset, all kinds of things. So you can check out the documentation to learn more about what all that applies to. I'm going to show you really quick: spacing, padding, margin, inset width, height, max height, gap, space, translate. And then colors, it applies to the background color, the text color, border color, placeholder, yada, yada, yada. So if we go into colors, you can edit those here. And we've got a couple semantically named color slugs. So we've got background and foreground, and then we've got a bunch of chronological slugs: primary, secondary, tertiary, all the way to denary. If you don't know these, I didn't when I was getting started on this and trying to figure out a way to organize all these. And then finally, we've got light and dark. And again, the way these work is they apply to your background color. So primary would be your utility class BG primary. Text color would be text primary. Border color would be border primary. So you'd have for background, like for the background of the page, you might want to use BG background. And for the text color of the page, you might want to use text foreground. There really is an art to how you organize these, but what I tend to do is the background color of the site I set to that color here. The foreground I use for any of the body text as well as the titles. The primary, I kind of think of that as like buttons, but also like if you have some more unique color palette, you might want to use that primary color for maybe your titles as well. And then secondary, tertiary, you kind of, these slots, you kind of just want to organize these in a way that you can remember what is what. And then light and dark, I tend to either leave as their defaults, which are white for light and then black for dark. But if you're using an off-white, such as like F7, F7, F7 or something, you would change that here. Notice that these colors here are shown in RGB format. You need to enter them in RGB format because that allows us to use like different opacities for backgrounds and texts. And if, for example, say you have a hex code, you can click into this custom color, paste your hex code here, and it'll automatically convert it into RGB, or you can enter RGB here or HSL. So I have a background color that I want to use. I'm going to paste it in, and you'll see there, here's our color. And then if I go to RGB, this is the hex code here. So this, again, remember we applied the, we applied text primary. Okay, I'm gonna also add this to primary so we can see how this would work. We're gonna use this as our background color, but remember we applied that text primary color to this heading font here. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that there as well. And then if I hit save, you see it automatically applies it. The background, we're not using the background utility class anywhere yet, so that doesn't apply. So how can we start using that, like for example, on our background of our page? If we go to apply classes, the apply classes settings are where you can globally apply Tailwind CSS classes to site elements. This works very much like the Tailwind apply method. So you can apply multiple classes, multiple Tailwind utility classes to specific site elements. And I've organized them here by typography, and then by blocks for Gutenberg blocks, by elements such as, any elements that don't fall inside a block, any HTML elements that don't fall in the blocks or typography category. And then finally body, I left that out because that tends to be one that I adjust quite a bit. So it would fall under this elements category, but this applies to the body of all the pages of your site. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply this BG background color. And if I hit save, There we go. We lost our text. Where'd it go? Oh, it's because it's using that text primary color. If I go ahead and delete that, you can see we're back in action here. So just so you can see another couple of things you can do. Here we have an H1 tag, and I could set all of my global H1, H2, H through H6 styles here, along with their responsive sizing as well. And again, you have access to all the Tailwind classes. So not only can you do sizing, you can do colors, you can do line height, you can do font weight, you can do font. It goes on. And this gives being able to apply these classes to elements this way is super powerful. So if I'm going to go ahead and say, let's make all of our H1 tags 6XL, and then on mobile, I'm going to call it text 3XL, and I want to use the primary. Let's use the font primary. Oops, font primary. Oh, I need to go back to desktop, font primary. And font primary, we haven't chosen a font family yet, but one cool thing that will happen, so these classes will be applied to all H1s throughout the site globally. But if you apply any classes inline, that will override these styles. So the goal here is that you set most of these global sizes and styles here, and then if you want more control, more granular control, you can do it inline on the block itself. Okay, so why don't I head back up to configure Tailwind, and okay, under our font family here, I wanted to change the font family. I wanted to use Inter. And one cool thing, this is pretty neat, we've got all the Google fonts in here as well as a handful of system fonts. So you can search for, any Google font and it will automatically load here. You can scroll through and see all the Google fonts that you have available. I'm going to go ahead and use Enter. So then anything that uses the font primary utility class, we'll use that Enter font. Actually, before I do Enter, I'm going to show you Monoton, because remember we're going to apply this to all H1 tags. So if I hit save, remember we applied this font primary to all H1 tags, and we just changed that to the Monoton font. This should change to Monoton when I hit save. There we go. Pretty magical. And then again, you can override this. Say you don't want to use Monoton here. You can do, you have access to all of the Tailwind default fonts of font sans serif mono. So I'm going to go ahead and do font mono instead. And I'm wondering, I'm typing this in and I'm like, why is that not overriding? Oh, it's because we had the font primary added. So if I remove that, this font serif should apply. There we go. So and if I remove the font serif, the font primary should apply, because remember, we have that set here as font primary. So font serif, now we're back to our font primary. Pretty neat. And like I said, very, very powerful once you start getting the hang of this. So some other things in here, you can adjust the border width. Here's all our default sizes, and if you wanted to use a different size, you could have 8 be like 8 rem instead of m, and this just allows you to, sometimes you want a little more control over the border width, so you can change that here. The border radius, you can change all of the sizes of those border radius here. The box shadows, we use all the default Tailwind box shadows here. You can change those as well. Font sizes, we use the default, Tailwind font sizes here. You can update those as well. Line heights, and then letter spacing as well to use custom sizes. So if you start going in and applying classes and they aren't quite what you want, you can adjust all of those settings here. I'm going to walk through real quick. Apply classes. Again, all your global typography elements, paragraphs, links, lists, H1 through H6. You can apply all of the Tailwind styles here. for, you know, any size device. And then blocks, we don't have all the blocks in here. The whole goal of the apply classes section is to quickly apply styles globally. And I may eventually, depending on how people use this, we may add all the blocks. But for now, we've got the key blocks that you're going to want to quickly edit their styles. So the button block, a navigation link for like navigation in the header. So these are a little different than the link you would see here in the typography. This would be any A tag just in a body. The navigation link would be in the navigation block, the image block, the featured image block, the columns block, the column block, and the table block. And then finally, our elements tab. This is where you can apply classes to HTML elements. And right now, the only HTML element I've added here is a button. We need to add a whole bunch of stuff here as well for things like forms, and I know there's going to be just a bunch of other things we run into. But button, for example, would be, it doesn't apply to the core Gutenberg button, but it would apply to, you know, a button on a form, such as a submit button. So like, say for example, on my site for selling the plugin, the Draft Pro plugin, I'm using Easy Digital Downloads, and within Easy Digital Downloads, it generates a button, markup for a button automatically for me, and I want that style to be the same style as my site styles. And I don't want to write custom CSS, so you would just come here and apply the classes that you would want applied. Okay, that is it for those two panels there. Finally, if you're using the draft theme, the block-based theme, right now the only setting that you can update is the content size, the layout, the content size, the wide size. That would be these items here. So like the wide width, full width is going to always be full width. But for example, let's say we want to change the content size, which is just the default. Right now it's set to 45 rem. I'm going to update that to 60 and see how it automatically, and I'm going to reset that back down to 45. And then the gutter would be, you know, the padding on each side of the page, and then the block gap would be the gap between columns and stuff. Okay, and as we start using this more and more, we'll extend these settings if we need to. Okay, finally, we've got import and export, and this is really powerful. This is where you can import and export all of these configurations between sites. So right now, it automatically generated all of the styles that we've applied, so you can copy that, and then any site that you have the Draft Pro plugin installed, you can paste it. So it makes it super easy to go through here and, you know, update and make a site match without having to like create all these styles from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and reset this, and then I'm going to import the configuration file I had all set up for this. Let me reset this really quick. So just to show you kind of what the before and after of importing looks like. So again, here's our before. We don't have any of this stuff really optimized for devices. We're going to do that all with this configuration file. So I'm going to go back into our default settings, go to import export, and I've got a file added. Okay, and eventually we're going to have a marketplace where you can just grab a configuration file and copy and paste it into your site. So let's go ahead and hit save. Whoa, how cool is that? So if I open this up, you'll see that there are a bunch of elements that have been adjusted for us. We've got a background color. We've got our foreground is our default. We've got font family set. We have serif and inter for primary and secondary. Let's see here. Our apply classes. We've got text large for our desktop, Links, we have no underline. We want it to underline and hover. We want to, so see how we have these texts. It's so cool how it automatically applies these. Hover text opacity. So if I hover a link, we've got a H1. We've got all kinds of styles on here. We've got our primary font. We have some, let's see, this is interesting. So we've got some padding. We've got different sizes and margins, automatically applied site-wide. And let's see, our blocks, what do we have in here? We have a button. We've got a whole bunch of stuff on our button here. We've got the primary font. We want to change the background opacity on hover. Uppercase, a bold font. We want the text to be the background, the same color as the background, so we use text background. We've got a border radius of full, and then the background color is the foreground. So it's kind of an inverse where the text is the background and the background is the foreground. Pretty cool. And then what else do we have? We have images. They have rounded. We've got transitions on these. They ease in. We have them scale up in size on hover. And we've got a large shadow on those. So again, this is pretty neat. So this, like this image, for example, that shadow XL, say for example, you wanted this XL shadow style to be different, you would come up here and go to box shadow XL and paste in, you know, a different shadow, and it would automatically apply it everywhere. And then on the front end, if I refresh this page, you see everything is styled. And let's take a look at this. Everything adjusts accordingly depending on what device you're on. Pretty neat. Okay, and there's one other thing that I want to show you, which this is going to be pretty powerful too. So we've got hopefully you've got a grasp on how to configure Tailwind, how to apply classes globally, if you're using the theme, how to adjust the theme settings, and how to import and export all of these configurations. Okay, and one other thing I don't want to forget about, there's a really powerful feature that you have access to with the Draft Pro plugin. If you head on over to WP Draft and go to block patterns, we've got a whole bunch and growing list of copy and paste block patterns for different parts of your site. Eventually we'll have full sites here and pages. For now, we've got a handful of patterns that you can copy and paste. They're all optimized for mobile and tablet, and all you can do is copy it and then drop it into your page. And it, as you can see, it absorbed most of the colors we set here. I can change these really quickly if I go in. This has, let's see, 2 primary. Let's do 2 background. Get rid of this 2 primary. As you can see, it changed that color there to give it a gradient, or we could just get rid of this altogether and do text primary because it's got a gradient, or we could do text background to give it that background color, or any other color that you would like to use. And then down here we've got a button. Let's see, we've got a class applied. It's right now it's absorbing all the colors that are set, so it's absorbing that tertiary color. What we could do is have it, let's have it go to on hover BG background. Get rid of this. So very quickly you can start editing these. Let's do BG background. There we go. How neat is that? All of a sudden this is customized to the style of our site. And I'm going to make this wide width instead of full width. And then why don't we just make this background same as the background. Get rid of a bunch of these classes. And as you can see, we've already started making a dent in this design here. And let's give this a shadow. And if we go to the front end to review this, we've got a pretty customized pricing table that you can easily swap out with your own colors. So that about sums it up. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly through our site at wpdraft.com. Thank you again for buying the Draft Pro plugin. I would love to see what you create with it. Please hit me up on Twitter, twitter.com/Lee Shadle. Follow me. I would love to see what you create.